I never imagined that the same son I carried in my arms would one day hand me a $5 lottery ticket just to humiliate me in front of strangers. And I definitely never imagined that the same ticket, the same one that made everyone laugh at me, would end up rewriting my destiny, destroying his marriage, exposing his truth, and building a legacy that would shake an entire city. My name is Margaret Wilson, and I'm 70 years old. If you were to see me today, an older African-American woman with soft gray hair tied back in a bun, warm brown skin, and hands marked by a lifetime of work, you might think I've always been this calm, this steady, this quietly strong. But that wasn't always true. There was a time when life felt heavier than my own bones. A time when grief lived in my chest like a second heartbeat. A time when silence felt safer than hope. I live in a small, aging house at the end of a quiet street in Raleigh, North Carolina. The walls are thin. The floorboards creak. And the roof, well, you'll hear more about that later, but let's just say it leaks whenever rain decides to test my patience. This house isn't fancy, but it holds memories. 40 years of them. Memories of my late husband Henry, the only man who ever truly saw me. The man whose laughter filled every corner of these rooms long before illness hollowed them out. I still remember the day the doctors told us he had cancer. I remember the tremor in his hand when he squeezed mine. I remember thinking, we will fight this. Whatever it costs, we'll fight. And it did cost. It cost everything we had. Our savings, our retirement, our home. I sold jewelry. I sold furniture. I even sold the little car Henry bought for our anniversary. People say love is a treasure. They don't tell you how expensive that treasure becomes when you're trying to keep someone alive. But I never regretted a single dollar. Henry died with his hand in mine, whispering one last request. Promise me you'll take care of Kiera. Promise me you won't let her drown in that student debt. Promise me, Margaret. I promised him. And a promise made to a dying husband is not just a promise. It's a lifetime contract engraved into your soul. But that promise is the same reason my son, Devin, turned against me. You see, after Henry passed, Devin finished his real estate certification program and came to me demanding help with his $150,000 debt. He didn't know that I was drowning myself. He didn't know that I had already sold everything. He didn't know that all that was left of me were tired hands, a broken heart, and a promise to his father. When I told him I couldn't help, his face hardened in a way I had never seen before. Not from anger, no. From disappointment. Disgust. The kind of look a child should never give his mother. That was the day something inside him twisted. A seed of bitterness he watered for years. And while my daughter Kiera stayed close, helping me, loving me, standing with me, Devin drifted further and further away. Until one day, years later, he invited me to a party at his home. A party where he would show the world how successful he'd become. A party where he would show his new wife, Alyssa, how generous he could be. A party where he would show his friends how wealthy he had grown. And a party where he would show me exactly how small he believed I was. I still remember the day Devin called me. His voice was smooth. A little too smooth. The kind of voice people use when they're trying to hide something sharp behind a smile. Mom, he said, we're having a small celebration this weekend. Nothing fancy. Just friends, family. You should come. Nothing fancy. When Devin says nothing fancy, you have to multiply it by 10, add a decorator, subtract humility, and sprinkle a little arrogance on top. Still, he was my son. And even after all the distance, all the cold phone calls, all the years of silence that stretched between us like a dried-out riverbed, I wanted to believe there was still a bridge somewhere. So I dressed as nicely as I could. A simple lavender blouse, my best slacks, and the small silver earrings Henry had given me on our 10th anniversary, the last piece of jewelry I never sold. Kiera offered to drive me. "Mom, I don't trust Devin," she said, pulling her curly hair into a bun. "You don't owe him anything. But a mother's heart. It has a way of hoping even when hope has no business showing up." So we drove to Devin's house. A big modern place in a wealthy neighborhood, the kind where every lawn looks professionally manicured and every car in the driveway has a brand logo I can't pronounce. When we stepped inside, I felt it. Displacement. A sting of invisibility. The music was loud, the lights were warm, and the crowd was filled with polished people wearing expensive smiles. Alyssa, Devin's wife, spotted us first. She was beautiful, tall, with long straight hair and a dress that cost more than my monthly income back then. But her smile was the kind you wear when you're pretending someone smells bad. "Oh, Margaret. You made it," she said, like she hadn't expected me to show up. "Let me, find you a place to sit." Not a welcome. Not a hug. Not even a, "How are you?" Just a place to sit. She led me to the far corner of the room, near a decorative plant and an empty table. No chair, just a low ottoman. The kind you sit on when no other option exists. Her meaning was loud even if her voice wasn't. Kiera leaned in and whispered, "She's parking you like furniture." I forced a smile. "It's okay," I whispered back. "I'm here for Devin." But Devin, my son, my flesh and blood. He didn't even look at me. He walked past me twice. Once carrying a tray of drinks. Once laughing with his friends. And both times it was as if I were transparent. A ghost in the home I helped him grow up in. Then the room dimmed slightly, and he climbed onto a small platform, a stage of sorts. The presentation moment. The moment he'd been planning. "Everyone," he shouted through the microphone. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight. You know, life has been good to me. Really good. And a big part of that is because of one person." My heart jumped. For a second, a foolish, fragile second, I thought he meant me. But then he turned dramatically toward Alyssa. "My wife," he continued, "has stood by me through everything. She deserves the world." Alyssa covered her mouth in fake surprise. Her friends squealed. Someone yelled awe. Devin snapped his fingers, and the big screen behind him lit up. A slideshow. Photos of him and Alyssa vacationing. Their engagement. Him buying her expensive gifts. Their trip to Italy. But not a single photo of me. Not one. Then came the moment. "Sweetheart," Devin said, "I got you something special." A spotlight turned toward the big window. Outside, a real estate agent was standing with a gold envelope. A murmur spread across the crowd. Devin grinned, soaking in the attention. He held up the envelope dramatically and handed it to Alyssa. Her eyes widened. She gasped. The crowd gasped with her. It was a full ownership deed to a brand new luxury apartment downtown, the kind with floor-to-ceiling windows and a price tag that could feed a small town. Everyone erupted in cheers. Everyone. Except Kiera. And me. I clapped politely, but my hands felt heavy. Then suddenly, the cheers died down. Lights shifted. The microphone squeaked. "And of course," Devin said, turning toward the corner where I sat alone, "I didn't forget someone very special." The crowd turned their heads. 100 eyes stared right at me. Kiera's grip tightened on my hand. Devin walked toward me, smiling a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mom," he said loudly, too loudly, "I know things have been tough for you. So I got you something too." He reached into his pocket. My heart, for a split second, believed. Maybe a small gift? A gesture? A sign he still had some love left? But what he pulled out was a single, wrinkled, $5 lottery ticket. He held it up for everyone to see. Some people snickered. Some smiled awkwardly. A few actually laughed. And then he dropped it into my lap. Not handed it. Not offered it. Dropped it. Like trash. Like I was trash. The humiliation burned through me, slow, deep, and unforgettable. Kiera stood up in anger, but I placed my hand on her arm and shook my head. Not here. Not tonight. Devon walked back to Alyssa, kissed her in front of the whole room, and whispered, "Well, everyone gets what they deserve." The crowd laughed again. I sat there with a $5 ticket in my lap. And that was the moment. The exact moment. I realized my son no longer saw me as his mother. He saw me as a burden. An embarrassment. A nobody. But life. Life has a strange way of correcting insults. That $5 ticket, the one everyone laughed at, it would soon become the most powerful weapon in my story. And the very thing that would tear Devon's world apart. Kiera didn't say a single word as we walked out of Devon's house. Not during the ride down his polished driveway. Not while passing the rows of luxury cars parked outside. Not even when the neighborhood lights faded into the dark streets of Raleigh. She gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. I could feel her anger burning beside me, a fire so hot it could have melted the entire dashboard. But I felt nothing. Just an emptiness. A quiet that settled into my bones. The kind of quiet that only humiliation can create. Slow, cold, paralyzing. The $5 lottery ticket lay in my lap. Crumpled. Weightless. Mocking me. Kiera finally broke the silence when we reached a red light. "Mom," she whispered, her voice trembling with anger. "How could he do that to you?" I kept my eyes on the traffic light, watching it glow red like a wound. "He's hurting," I said softly. "No," Kiera snapped. "He's selfish." And Alyssa, God, she was laughing with him. "That woman is poison." I didn't defend Alyssa. I couldn't. But I wasn't ready to accept how far Devon had fallen either. That's the curse of motherhood. Even when the world shows you your child's worst face, a part of you refuses to see it. When Kiera pulled into my driveway, she turned off the engine and grabbed my hand. "Mom, you don't deserve this," she said. "You don't deserve him treating you like you're nothing." I gave her a small smile. One of those smiles mothers learn to wear when they want to protect their child from their own heartbreak. "I'm okay," I lied. She hugged me tightly. "Call me if you need anything. I mean it." When she left, I walked into my quiet little house. The moment the door closed behind me, I let myself feel everything. I leaned against the wall. I pressed my hand to my chest. And I allowed the tears to fall, the kind of tears that don't come from sadness alone but from years of carrying things alone. The humiliation replayed in my mind like a cruel movie. Devon dropping the lottery ticket. Alyssa's smirk. The crowd laughing. Being placed in that forgotten corner. My son calling his wife the woman who deserves the world. And then giving me $5. I pressed my palms to my eyes and sank onto the floor. The house was dark, lit only by the streetlight shining faintly through the curtains. That was the night. The first night in my whole life that I allowed myself to admit something painful. My son didn't love me anymore. At least, not the version of me that existed in his new world. A world where success mattered more than sacrifice. Where appearances mattered more than family. Where his wife's comfort mattered more than my dignity. I wasn't his mother. I was a symbol of the life he wanted to escape. A reminder of the poverty he was ashamed of. I wiped my tears and forced myself to stand up. My knees ached. My back protested. Age makes even heartbreak feel heavier. I walked to my bedroom, took off my blouse, hung it carefully in my closet, a habit from the years when money was tight and clothes had to last. Then I pulled the lottery ticket from my pocket and placed it on my dresser beside Henry's framed photo. His smile stared back at me. Warm, reassuring, steady. "Oh, Henry," I whispered. "Look what our boy has become." I touched the photo frame. For a moment, I imagined his hand covering mine, like he used to do whenever life became too much. But he wasn't here. I was alone. And that night, for the first time since his funeral, I felt truly, painfully, completely alone. I lay down in bed and stared at the ceiling. The leak in the corner dripped softly, a slow, rhythmic reminder of everything that was broken in my life. Drip, drip, drip. I closed my eyes. And somewhere between exhaustion and pain, I whispered one small prayer. "God, please show me that I still matter." I didn't know that the answer to that prayer was already sitting quietly on my dresser, a $5 insult that held a $70 million destiny. The next morning, sunlight crept through the curtains and woke me earlier than usual. Not because I slept well, no. My sleep had been broken, thin, heavy with humiliation. But routine is a strange kind of strength. Even when your heart is shattered, your body still remembers what it must do. I made myself a cup of weak coffee. The cheap kind, the one I always bought because saving $1 here or there had become second nature. I sat at the small kitchen table and stared out the window at my patchy little backyard. Everything felt the same. And yet nothing felt the same. The laughter from last night still echoed in my ears. The sting of the $5 ticket still burned in my palm. And Devon's voice, that cold, rehearsed voice, repeated in my mind like a cruel chorus. "Everyone gets what they deserve." I sipped my bitter coffee and looked around my old kitchen. The paint peeling near the windowsill. The stove that took forever to heat up. The refrigerator that hummed like it had asthma. And I wondered, how did I become the woman my own son saw as worthless? After finishing half my coffee, I decided to clean. Something to distract my mind. Cleaning is what mothers do when emotions become too loud. I wiped down counters, organized the pantry, folded laundry, swept the hallway, and then I entered my bedroom. Sunlight hit the dresser, illuminating the lottery ticket sitting beside Henry's photo. For a moment, I felt offended just looking at it, as if the paper itself carried Devon's cruelty. I picked it up between my fingers. Flimsy. Worthless. Exactly what Devon thought of me. "I should just throw this away," I muttered. I walked toward the trash can, then stopped. A strange thought passed through me. Soft, small, almost silly. Check it. Just check it before throwing it away. Close the chapter properly. My old desktop computer sat in the corner of the room. It took nearly 5 minutes to turn on, making wheezing noises like it was protesting life itself. I typed in the state lottery website. Slow. Frozen twice. Refreshed 3 times. Finally, the winning numbers appeared on the screen. I lifted the ticket. The first number matched. My heartbeat quickened. The second number matched. I frowned. Coincidence. Third number matched. My hands started to tremble. Fourth matched. Fifth matched. Then the Powerball number. 12. The exact number on the ticket in my hand. I froze. No breath. No sound. Just stillness. Like the world had paused to let me process the impossible. I blinked hard. Then I whispered. No, 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 this cannot be real. The air left my lungs. My legs felt weak. I checked the numbers again. Refreshed the page. Checked again. But the truth refused to change. I was holding a $70 million winning ticket. The same ticket Devon threw in my lap like an insult. The same ticket people laughed at. The same ticket Alyssa smirked at. The same ticket that humiliated me. Was now worth more money than my entire son's life savings, career, and marriage combined. I sank slowly into my chair. A long, shaky laugh slipped out of me. Not from happiness. From disbelief. From shock. From the absurdity of life's timing. "Henry," I whispered, looking at his photo. "Is this you? Did you send this to me?" For years, life had beaten me down. Taken my husband. Taken my health. Taken my stability. Taken my dignity. But in that moment, holding that ticket, it felt like life had finally returned something. For the first time in a very long time, I felt seen. I felt chosen. I felt blessed. Not because of the money, but because the universe had witnessed my pain and answered in a way no human ever could. I pressed my hand to my chest, breathing slowly. A new thought formed, calm, steady, powerful. I must protect myself. This wasn't for Devon. Not for Alyssa. Not for anyone who laughed at me. This was for me. For Henry's memory. For Kiera's loyalty. For all the elderly mothers abandoned just like me. So I picked up the phone. Not to call Devon. Not to call Kiera. I dialed a number written in Henry's handwriting. An old trusted lawyer he once told me about. "Hello." A calm voice answered. "Peterson Law Office." I swallowed hard. "My name is Margaret Wilson," I said softly. I need help setting up a trust. And I need everything to be confidential." There was silence. Then the lawyer spoke gently. "Mrs. Wilson, tell me everything." And so I did. And that was the moment my life took a turn. From humiliation to empowerment. From brokenness to rebirth. From invisibility to purpose. All because of a $5 ticket my son used to shame me. Life has a strange sense of justice. I didn't sleep that entire night. My mind kept circling the same truth again and again. This wasn't just luck. This wasn't an accident. This was a shift, a turning of the tides, something bigger than anything life had given me in years. And with that shift came responsibility, fear, and power I wasn't used to holding. For the first time in a very long time, the next chapter of my life would be in my hands, not anyone else's. Early the next morning, I took a bus downtown. I didn't want to call Kiera, not yet. I needed to move quietly, carefully, deliberately. The world becomes dangerous when people know you suddenly have value. Especially when some of those people once told you that you had none. Attorney Peterson's office was small and simple. No marble floors, no fancy decor. Just honest wood furniture, framed law degrees, and a secretary who greeted me with warmth instead of suspicion. When Peterson came out to meet me, he shook my hand like a man who respected strangers, not like someone assessing what they could gain from them. "Mrs. Wilson," he said gently, "your call sounded serious. Please sit. Tell me everything." So I did. I told him about the humiliation. The party. The $5 ticket Devon had tossed into my lap like garbage. And then the numbers. The impossible, life-changing numbers that matched perfectly. For a moment, he didn't speak. He simply absorbed the story, his expression shifting from shock to calm professionalism. "This changes everything," he said softly. "I know," I replied, my voice just above a whisper, "and that's what scares me." "Well, let's make sure it changes things for the better." He opened a blank file. He was careful, patient, no judgment in his eyes, only planning. "What would you like to do first?" he asked. "I want protection," I said immediately. privacy, and a way to use this money with purpose. He nodded. Then we begin with a trust. A private one. Anonymous. No one needs to know this money belongs to you. Just hearing those words loosened something tight inside my chest. Anonymous. Invisible, but by choice this time, not by neglect. He asked me what I wanted to name the trust. My throat tightened at the memory of Henry. His eyes, his hands, his final words. I could almost feel him sitting there beside me, steadying me. Call it the Henry's Haven Trust, I said, my voice trembling. In honor of my husband. And for people like us. And what is the Trust's mission? He asked. I took a long breath. Not of pain, but of conviction. To help abandoned parents, I said. Elderly mothers and fathers pushed aside by their own children. Seniors left alone. People forgotten by the very families they raised. Peterson's eyes softened. That's powerful, Mrs. Wilson. And desperately needed. It's personal, I replied. No one should end their life feeling unwanted. Not after giving their entire soul to their family. He wrote down every word carefully, giving each sentence the respect it deserved. Then he explained how the lottery claim would work. How anonymity would protect me. How filing through the trust would ensure that my name never publicly appeared. How Devon, or anyone else, would never be able to trace the money back to me unless I allowed it. When he mentioned the lump sum amount, over $40 million after taxes, I didn't react with shock. I didn't gasp or cry. I just sat very still. The number didn't matter. The money didn't matter. What mattered was what this meant. I wasn't helpless anymore. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't worthless. I finally had the power to choose my own life. And the strength to walk away from anyone who tried to break me again. Peterson placed the papers in front of me and handed me a pen. Whenever you're ready, he said softly. I held that pen for a long moment. Then I looked at Henry's name printed at the top of the trust. And I signed. It felt like drawing a line between the woman I used to be and the woman I was becoming. I walked out of that office with nothing in my hands. No check, no cash, no documents, but everything had changed. The shift had begun. Quiet, steady, irreversible. And no one, not Devon, not Alyssa, not the people who laughed at me, knew a thing. When I stepped out of the lawyer's office, the sky looked different. The same blue. The same clouds. The same sun. But everything felt lighter. As if the weight sitting on my spine for decades had finally shifted. I walked slowly to the bus stop, clutching my purse the same way I always did, even though nothing inside it had changed yet. But I had changed. Inside my chest, something warm flickered. A spark of dignity I thought life had taken away forever. Henry would have smiled at me that day. I could almost hear his voice. Maggie, you finally stood up for yourself. 4 years after he died, I carried guilt. Guilt that I couldn't save him. Guilt that I couldn't save our house. Guilt that I couldn't protect my family from falling apart. But sitting on that bus seat, with the trust paperwork on its way and anonymity secured, I realized. I was finally building something again. Not for Devon. Not for anyone else. For me. For the people Henry wanted me to help. For the parents who died alone in nursing homes. For the forgotten elders who were thrown away like old furniture once they couldn't give anymore. I wasn't rich yet. Not officially. Not legally. Not until the claim cleared. But for the first time in my life, I felt rich. Rich in peace. Rich in purpose. Rich in silence. When I returned home that afternoon, my phone was buzzing. Kiera. Sweet, loving Kiera. My daughter who stayed by my side the night of the humiliation. My daughter who wiped my tears without asking questions. My daughter who never once demanded, judged, or blamed. I answered quietly, "Hi, baby." "Mom? Are you okay? You left so early." For a moment, I almost told her everything. Every detail. Every number. Every plan. But then I remembered the lawyer's words. Until the trust is registered, until the claim is processed, tell no one. Not even the one person who deserved to know. So I steadied my voice. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm all right. Just needed some fresh air." She paused. "Mom, I know yesterday hurt. I know Devin hurt you. I don't know what's going on with him anymore, but I'm here. I need you to know that." My throat tightened. "I know, Kiera. And I'm grateful. You've always been the one who stayed." She exhaled softly, her voice warm like a blanket. "I'll come by tonight. I'll bring dinner." I smiled. "I'd like that." Kiera, my anchor. My living proof that I hadn't failed as a mother. But even as I talked to her, my mind drifted toward Devin. Where was he right now? Laughing somewhere? Bragging about gifting a luxury apartment? Planning his next party? I wondered if he'd even thought of me since the humiliation. I wondered if he felt guilt. If he felt shame. If he cared. Deep inside, I knew the answer. No. Not yet. Not until the world shifted under his feet. Not until he learned what humility truly meant. And life. Life had already started preparing that lesson. For the next week, I kept quiet. I lived normally. I cooked. Cleaned. Read my Bible. Went for walks. Talked to Kiera. Avoided Devin. I followed every instruction Attorney Peterson gave me. Paperwork. Verification. Identity protection. Trust registration. Bank setup. And then, 5 days later, the call came. A calm voice on the other end. "Mrs. Wilson, this is the State Lottery Office. Your claim through Henry's Haven Trust has been approved. The funds will be deposited by noon today." I sat down slowly. No tears. No screaming. Just breath. Long, steady, life-changing breath. "Thank you," I whispered. When I ended the call, I closed my eyes and imagined Henry. Sitting in his chair. Watching me. Smiling that soft smile he saved only for me. "I did it, Henry," I whispered. "We did it." At 12:04 p.m., I opened my online banking app. There it was. A number I'd never even seen in movies. A number that could rebuild lives. A number that could silence cruelty. A number that could give dignity to people who lost theirs too soon. $43,217,890. I stared at it for a long time. And then something inside me settled. Not excitement. Not greed. Purpose. But life, as always, has a cruel sense of timing. My phone started ringing. Devin. His name, flashing on the screen like a ghost from a life I no longer belong to. I did not answer. He called again. And again. And again. 12 times. Then a text appeared. "Mom. We need to talk. ASAP." I knew what he'd seen. I knew why he was calling. Someone had talked. Someone had shared the lottery news. Someone had whispered the words that would turn Devin's world upside down. A 70-year-old woman in the city claimed the jackpot through a private trust. He must have known instantly. He must have felt the floor fall out from under him. He must have realized the woman he mocked with a $5 ticket was now worth more than every party he ever threw. I put the phone down. Turned it face down. Let it buzz unanswered. For the first time in my life, Devin wanted something from me. But this time, I wasn't the same mother he once humiliated. I had power. I had silence. I had purpose. And life was just beginning to teach him the first lesson. You never know who God will lift at the very moment you try to break them. Devin didn't just call me that day. He called the entire week. Morning, afternoon, midnight, repeatedly. Sometimes he left voicemails. Sometimes he sent long, panicked texts. Sometimes he sent short ones, desperate, pleading, confused. But not once, did he say the word sorry. Every message was the same tone. Entitled. Demanding. Panicked. Mom, why aren't you answering? Mom, we need to talk immediately. Mom, this affects the whole family. Call me. Now. Don't ignore me. I'm your son. Mom, you owe me an explanation. Owe him. That was the word that made me set the phone down every single time. I owed him nothing. Not anymore. Kiera noticed something was off. She visited almost daily now, bringing groceries, checking in, trying to make me smile. Mom, she said one evening as she set a casserole on my kitchen counter, why are you so quiet? Is Devin bothering you again? I couldn't tell her the truth yet. The trust still required a short confidentiality period before I could disclose anything. So I simply said, he's calling a lot. That's all. Kiera rolled her eyes immediately. If he's calling, it's because he wants something. He never calls just to check on you. She sighed, exhausted. I don't know what's wrong with him anymore. I touched her hand gently. Sweetheart, there's nothing wrong with you or me. People show their true colors eventually. She nodded, but I could tell she sensed something shifting inside me. Something she'd never seen before. Strength. Resolve. A new spine forming inside my soul. 3 days later, it happened. A loud, aggressive banging on my front door. Not tapping. Not knocking. Pounding. The kind of knocking a police officer uses when they're certain someone inside is hiding. I froze for a moment. Then I heard his voice, muffled but unmistakably desperate. Mom. Mom, open the door. I didn't move. Mom, I know you're home. I saw Kiera's car. Please open. Still, I didn't move. The pounding grew louder. Mom, open this door. I'm not leaving until you talk to me. I slowly walked toward the peephole and peered through. Devin stood there in a suit jacket thrown over a wrinkled t-shirt, hair messy, eyes red as if he hadn't slept. There was fear in his posture. The kind that comes when a man realizes the person he underestimated has suddenly become more powerful than he ever imagined. Behind him, sitting on the bottom step of my porch, was Alyssa. I had nearly forgotten she existed. She looked different. Not polished and perfect like at the party. Not glamorous or elegant. Her eyes were puffy. Her hair unstyled. Her clothes wrinkled in a way that looked almost desperate. She wasn't there to support her husband. She wasn't there to apologize. She was there because she wanted something. I stepped back from the door quietly, letting them stay outside. Their muffled argument began. Alyssa hissed, I told you to be nice. She has money now. Devin snapped back, I am being nice. She's ignoring me. You humiliated her. You told me to. That's not the point, Devin. We need her now. I felt an unexpected wave of calm wash over me. That calm a mother feels when she finally understands something painful with absolute clarity. They didn't love me. They didn't care for me. They didn't respect me. They needed me like people need an ATM. Nothing more. And for the first time ever, I wasn't available. Devin pounded again. Mom. Please. I know you're in there. We're your family. My family. Funny how he remembered that word only when money entered the room. Then, for the first time in years, I spoke not as a defeated mother, but as a woman with boundaries. Through the closed door, calm, steady, firm, I said, "Devon, go home." The silence outside was immediate. Then, "Mom, what? Why?" I placed my palm on the door as if touching the past one last time. "You made your choices," I said softly. "And now, I'm making mine." Alyssa whispered anxiously, "Devon, do something." But Devon just stood there, stunned, realizing for the first time in his adult life that he was not in control. He tried again, voice breaking. "Mom, is this really you? You're shutting me out." "No," I said. "You shut me out a long time ago. Today, I'm finally closing a door you abandoned years before." He didn't speak after that. He stood there in silence. Long, painful silence. The kind that eats a person alive. Then I heard footsteps. Their voices arguing as they walked down the driveway. Alyssa yelling something about losing everything. Devon pleading, insisting he'd fix it. And then their car drove away. No screaming. No drama. No threats. Just a quiet defeat. Later that night, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and realized what had just happened. I had broken a cycle. The silence that once came from fear was now coming from power. I didn't cry. Not even once. Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't the abandoned one. I wasn't the helpless one. I wasn't the one begging for love. I was simply a woman who finally understood her worth and walked into her new life with dignity. The door they once slammed on me, I had calmly, peacefully closed on them. And that was only the beginning. 2 days after Devon and Alyssa left my doorstep empty-handed, something inside my home, inside me, shifted for good. There was no more trembling. No more waiting for apologies. No more hoping the child I raised would magically grow compassion. My heart wasn't broken anymore. It was free. And freedom has its own kind of momentum. The first thing I did was sit at my kitchen table, open my notebook, and write down everything I once wished existed in the world for people like me. A place where abandoned parents could live safely. A place where seniors weren't mocked, ignored, or forgotten. A place where dignity wasn't a luxury. A place where the elderly didn't have to beg their children for care. This wasn't charity. This was justice. It was Henry's dream for me, even if we never said it out loud. And so, I began. I called Attorney Peterson again. "Sir, I'm ready to fund the first project." "You mean the foundation?" he asked, pleasantly surprised. "Yes. Henry's Haven." My voice didn't shake at all this time. "I want to build it here, in the same city where my husband spent his last days. Alone except for me." He inhaled deeply. "Mrs. Wilson, this is extraordinary." "No. It's necessary." Within 2 weeks, land was purchased. Architects were hired. Designs were drafted. A beautiful senior living community. Safe, warm, modern, staffed with dignified caretakers. All built in the name of a man who died without the respect or support he deserved. And every time I reviewed a blueprint or approved a design, I thought, this is for the mothers whose children mock them. This is for the fathers left alone after giving everything. This is for the people like me. But while my world was rising from the ashes, Devon's world was burning quietly in the background. Kiera was the one who told me, "Mom, have you heard from Devon?" I looked up from my paperwork. "No." She hesitated, then sighed. "Mom, he lost his job." I blinked. Lost his job. He was already in trouble at work, Kiera continued gently. Performance issues. Complaints from clients. And she lowered her voice. He and Alyssa have been arguing non-stop ever since they found out about the lottery. I stayed silent. A mother's instinct is to worry, to rush in, to save. But not this time. Kiera continued quietly. Alyssa moved out last week. My eyebrows lifted. Moved out. Yes. Mom, she left him. Packed her things and went back to her parents. I closed my eyes for a moment. Alyssa hadn't come to my house for love or forgiveness. She came because she feared losing the lifestyle Devin once promised her. When she realized he couldn't access my money, her loyalty evaporated. That wasn't surprising. But what was surprising was what happened next. Kiera took a deep breath. Mom. Devin's been sleeping in his car. I opened my eyes. Not out of pity, but out of shock. How do you know? He called me, she said, her voice trembling with mixed emotions. He begged me to talk to you. He asked me to apologize on his behalf. What did you say to him? Kiera looked at me with eyes filled with pain, but also fierce loyalty. I told him he needed to apologize to you himself. Not for the money. Not for the ticket. But for the way he treated you for years. My heart softened for her, not for him. Sweetheart, I whispered, reaching for her hand. You have no idea how proud I am of you. She squeezed my hand tight. Mom. He's not the same anymore. He sounds broken, lost. I'm sorry he's hurting, I said softly. But pain doesn't erase the choices he made. It doesn't erase the way he laughed at me, or the way he threw that ticket in my lap, or the years he made me feel small. Kiera nodded slowly, her eyes sad but understanding. Mom, what are you going to do? I looked toward the window, toward the world changing outside, toward the foundation rising from the earth, toward the future I was building. And then I said the words that defined the new woman I had become. I will listen to him, but I won't rescue him. Kiera exhaled. Relieved. Proud. Respectful. For the first time in our lives, she saw me as more than her mother. She saw me as a woman who had finally learned to save herself. That evening, alone in my living room, I sipped chamomile tea and let the silence settle around me like a soft blanket. Devin losing everything wasn't something I celebrated. But it was something I understood. Life was teaching him the lesson he forced onto me. When you forget the people who raised you, life eventually reminds you who you really are. My phone buzzed once. A text from Devin. Mom. Please talk to me. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do anymore. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I turned the phone face down again. Not out of cruelty, but out of healing. He was learning. He was hurting. He was facing himself for the first time ever. And I was finally building a world where loneliness would not be a mother's destiny. A world where dignity belonged to the forgotten. And that was worth every moment of silence. 3 days passed after Devin's last message. 3 days of silence. 3 days of peace. 3 days of watching the walls of my new future slowly take shape, literally and emotionally. I spent my mornings at the construction site of Henry's Haven, wearing a light jacket and carrying a thermos of tea like an older woman supervising a dream finally becoming real. The workers greeted me warmly now, not with pity, but with respect. Good to see you again, Ms. Wilson. Morning, ma'am. The foundation is coming along beautifully. You've got a vision, and we're honored to build it. Every compliment landed softly, gently. like healing on places I didn't even know were wounded. And yet, Devon lingered in the back of my mind like a storm cloud refusing to leave the horizon. Not because I wanted him to, but because even after everything, even after the humiliation, the selfishness, the abandonment, a mother's heart never completely shuts off. It just learns to protect itself. Kiera stopped by my house on the evening of the 4th day. She brought me warm soup and a loaf of fresh bread she'd picked up on her way. "Mom," she began slowly, I need to tell you something. About Devon." I set down my bowl and looked at her carefully. "What happened now?" She hesitated, and for a moment, her confidence cracked. "He didn't just lose his job, Mom." I folded my hands in my lap. "Go on." "He lost the apartment too." I blinked once. Then again. "He lost the apartment?" "Yes." She nodded sadly. Alyssa's name was on the lease. When she moved out, she closed their account and took her share of their savings. "And Devon?" "He spent the last of his own money trying to cover debts. Credit cards. Late fees. Some business loans he took out trying to impress people." I felt something heavy settle in my chest. Not guilt, not sorrow. A realization. For years, Devon thought money made a person worthy. Now money had stripped him bare, revealing who he really was underneath. Kiera continued softly, "Mom, he's been sleeping in his car. For almost 2 weeks." I took a slow breath. "Did he ask you for money?" Kiera shook her head. "No. He asked for something else." I raised an eyebrow. "What?" She swallowed. "He asked if he could stay with you." Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence filled the room. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. Years of memories washed over me. Devon as a boy, running through the house. Devon hugging Henry tightly. Devon growing distant after Henry died. Devon accusing me of choosing Kiera. Devon laughing while handing me a $5 ticket. Devon walking away without looking back. And now Devon, alone in a car, humbled by life in ways my voice could never teach him. When I opened my eyes, Kiera was watching me with a mixture of hope and fear. "Mom, I'm not telling you what to do. I didn't want you to be blindsided." I touched her hand gently. "Thank you, baby. You did the right thing." She looked relieved. But I wasn't finished. "And Kiera, if Devon calls you again, don't agree or promise anything. Let him come to me himself." She nodded. "I will." That night, I sat alone in my quiet living room. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft shadows on the wall, the distant sound of neighbors' cars, everything felt strangely tender. Life was giving me time to think. Time to breathe. Time to choose my next steps with a clear mind instead of a mother's wounded heart. I whispered into the stillness. "Henry, guide me." And maybe it was him, or maybe it was the strength I'd rebuilt piece by piece. But clarity came over me like a soft wave. Devon didn't need rescuing. He needed accountability. He needed consequences. He needed to grow. And most of all, he needed to come to me with sincerity, not entitlement. The next morning, a soft knock came on my door. Not pounding. Not demanding. A knock that sounded tired, humbled, human. I opened the door slowly. And there he stood. My son. Not the arrogant man from the party. Not the shiny version shaped by greed and validation. Not the man who cared more about applause than family. This Devon was different. His shoulders slumped. His eyes swollen from nights without sleep. His clothes wrinkled. His hands shaking slightly. His voice cracked when he said, "Mom, can we talk?" I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't invite him in. Not yet. He swallowed hard, struggling to hold himself together. Please, he whispered. I have nowhere else to go. My heart, the mother's heart I tried so hard to guard, twitched painfully. But I stayed firm. Devon, I said softly, you need to tell me the truth. All of it. He nodded quickly, desperation spilling from him. Mom, I messed up. I messed up everything. I treated you horribly. I thought money made me better than you. I thought Alyssa and her world were more important than family. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Tears slid down his face. Not loud, not dramatic. Quiet tears. Broken tears. Real tears. Mom. I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I stepped aside. Just a little. Not enough to welcome him fully. Just enough to show him the door wasn't locked anymore. Come in, I said gently. And sit. We have a lot to talk about. Devon exhaled shakily and stepped inside. Not like a son returning home, but like a man finally returning to himself. Devon stepped inside like a man entering a courtroom where he was both the defendant and the witness. His eyes scanned the familiar walls, the old furniture, the framed photo of Henry on the shelf. He hadn't been here in months, by choice, not circumstance. Now he stood in the middle of my living room like a stranger searching for a place to put his shame down. I walked past him and sat in my armchair. He hesitated, then slowly lowered himself onto the edge of the sofa, as though afraid he might break something that had already been mended without him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't hostile. It was cleansing. Necessary. Finally, Devon broke it. Mom. I know I don't deserve your time. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't know where else to go. My voice was steady. Tell me everything, Devon. Not the excuses. The truth. He nodded, defeated. He took a long breath. Then it all came out. The job he lost. The clients he lied to, trying to appear more successful than he was. The loans he took without telling Alyssa. The fights. The eviction. The humiliation. The friends who disappeared once the money dried up. And finally, Alyssa packing her bags and leaving without even looking back. When he finished, he wiped his face with shaking hands. I never realized, he whispered, how lonely life becomes when the only thing people like about you is money. I let that truth sit in the air. Then I said quietly, that's what I tried to teach you, Devon. 4 years. But you were too busy chasing validation to hear it. He looked down. I know. And I'm sorry, Mom. I promise I am. There was something raw in his voice. Something I hadn't heard since he was a little boy crying after breaking a toy he loved. This wasn't manipulation. This wasn't entitlement dressed as remorse. This was humility, finally. He swallowed hard. Mom. I'm not here to ask for money. I know I don't deserve that. I need a place to breathe. A place to exist. Just until I figure out how to rebuild. I leaned back, watching him carefully. Devon. I'm not throwing you out. You can stay here for a few days. But you need to understand something. He lifted his eyes to mine, terrified and hopeful at the same time. This house will not be your escape from consequences. This time, you rebuild your life with your own hands. No shortcuts. No old habits. No greed. No entitlement. His mouth trembled. I'll do whatever you ask, Mom. I just want a chance to make things right. For me. I asked. He shook his head. For myself, he admitted. And for Dad. And for Kiera. And yes, for you. That sincerity, quiet, wounded, earnest, was the first real growth I'd seen in him in years. So I nodded once. You may stay. Not forever. Not without boundaries. But enough to give him a chance to become a man instead of a shadow of one. He broke down, shoulders shaking as he whispered, "Thank you. Thank you, Mom." I didn't go to him. I didn't hold him like I used to. Some things needed space to heal. But I did say softly, "You're welcome." The next morning, Devon woke early and cleaned the kitchen without being asked. He fixed the crooked shelf in the hallway. He offered to help in the garden. He apologized to Kiera. He cried again when she forgave him. He ate quietly, without pride. He spoke gently, without ego. He moved carefully, like someone handling the fragile pieces of a life he shattered himself. For the first time, he was learning what humility looks like. And what respect feels like. While Devon slowly rebuilt himself, I was building something bigger. Henry's Haven construction accelerated. Donations poured in after the local news accidentally picked up the story of my anonymous contribution to the hospital. People from around the city reached out. Stories of elderly parents abandoned. Stories of loneliness. Stories that mirrored mine. And every time I visited the construction site, every time I walked those freshly poured sidewalks, I felt Henry in the wind, in the sunlight, in the gentle rustle of leaves. This was our work. Our legacy. Our healing. 2 months later, Henry's Haven officially opened. A beautiful, modern, compassionate community. A safe home for neglected parents. A place where dignity was not negotiable. Kiera was beside me as I cut the ribbon. Tears ran down her cheeks. "You did this, Mom," she whispered, hugging me tightly. "Dad would be so proud." And then I heard footsteps behind us. I turned. It was Devon. In a clean shirt. Fresh haircut. New job. Steady eyes. A quiet posture. Not flashy. Not hungry for attention. Just present. He walked toward me with flowers in his hand. Lilies, my favorite, and with a tremble in his voice he said, "Mom, may I congratulate you?" I smiled gently. "Yes, Devon. You may." He handed me the flowers. Then he stepped back, not to take credit, not to be seen, but simply to stand with us. As a son. As a human being. As someone learning, finally, what family means. And for the first time in years, my little family, broken, bruised but healing, stood together in the sunlight. I felt Henry with us. His love. His strength. His blessing. I had risen from humiliation to purpose. From invisibility to power. From loneliness to legacy. And this time, I wasn't the forgotten one. I was the founder. The healer. The voice for the abandoned. The woman who took a $5 insult and turned it into a $70 million mission. A mission that would outlive us all. The story of how my son tried to make me feel worthless. Ended with thousands of abandoned parents regaining their worth. Because in the end, life always returns what you give. And I chose dignity. I chose purpose. I chose peace.